Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the second session of this year's conference. Hope everyone had a chance to maybe stretch your legs quickly and to grab a coffee. And great to have you all back here with us now for, as I said, the second session of the conference this year. So the opening session looked broadly across a wide range of different issues related to 5G targets, 5G rollout. And one of those issues that did come up was the issue of funding. And that's going to be something that we now look at in a lot more detail now, and look at some of the mechanisms and look at some of the schemes that are in place to help the coordination between member states and more generally the funding of 5G deployment. Really looking forward to this session. So I'd like to now welcome to the stage our moderator. So that's Elisabetta Caforio from Arthur D. Little. Elisabetta, welcome. Great to have you with us. And as I said, looking forward to the discussion. So I will pass the floor over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this session that will be focused on the European public funds allocated to 5G and the cross-country project. I'm Elisabetta Caforio, principal at Arthur D. Little, and head of the Global Competence Center focus on strategic regulation project. I'm very delighted to moderate this panel today and the discussion together with important stakeholders. We have in the panel, we have today Eric, head of sector 5G investment, DG Connect. Then we have Ralph Capito, Director External Affairs at Vintage Towers, and Alberto Di Felice, Director for Infrastructure, Privacy and Security Policy at Digital Europe. And finally, we have also Lenka Solkova, Project Coordinator at the 5G Corridor Munich Prague. So good morning and welcome everyone. Just a very few slides to introduce the topic. Please. So, first of all, we have the European Recovery and Resilience Facility that has established the biggest public financing ever for the network infrastructure. And so a big part of this funding is dedicated to digital transformation and very high capacity network development. On top of this, please, we can go to the next slide. In addition, the Connecting Europe Facility digital program is focused in supporting investment on European connectivity infrastructure of common interest. First of all, the transport corridors and edge. And the second 5G focus is on smart communities. So we have more than 1 billion dedicated on 5G, specifically on 5G in this sense. We can go to the next slide. In January, we had the first call for action with the first tenders published. The deadline is March. And the biggest part of these tenders is focused on the 5G corridors and multi and cross-country projects. So I will give the floor to Eric because I think he's the right person that can go into the specific ambition of the different funds allocated by Europe to 5G. Please, Eric.
Yes. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much, Elisabetta. I'm in this presentation, I'm going to focus on public investment in 5G at the European level. So thanks a lot for the introduction, because I will precisely delve into Connecting Europe Facility, the digital aspect of it, and the 5G aspects of the Recovery and Resilience Facility. Thanks a lot. So broadly, I will take it from where Rita earlier left it. She mentioned the digital compass, the priority for the next decade. I will just remind the two objectives, the two targets that we set for the end of the decade, which is every European household to have access to gigabit connectivity, and that's even broader than 5G. But if it involves whatever fixed lines, those will always be welcome for backhaul for 5G. So this is always very complementary and consistent, and 5G available in all populated areas. So these are the policy targets we are working against. We had already 5G objectives. We worked a lot indeed in research with the 5G PPP in the past, but that's what we're talking about. That's the context. So I will not really focus in this presentation on what the regional funds or the agricultural funds do, but they do have an impact, and member states work a lot at their level. They implement those funds, but at EU level, we focus on Connecting Europe Facility, CEF in short. So CEF Digital, this is what I will mention, and the RRF, the Recovery and Resilience Facility. So next slide, please. So CEF, in general, also for transport and energy, is a very huge fund of 33 billion. The digital aspect is 2 billion until 2027, and around 1 billion for 5G corridors. So let's focus on 5G cross-border corridors. So this action is quite a large action. It concerns transport in general, not only roads. There's also quite some focus on trains, for example. We estimated a large, there are 10T corridors which already exist, defined in the transport policy. We estimated around more than 5 billion need, and this 1 billion for 5G corridors is really a huge contribution to that, to focus on the cross-border, and of course incentivize the rest by private investments or other sources. So basically, I will not detail everything, but just to highlight the main priorities. This very month and until the 22nd of March, a call is open for the early wave already. So 100 millions are called now for proposals that can deliver already the cross-border sections of 10T corridors. 100 million. And there's a larger chunk coming next year of 200 millions. But the studies for these are available also. 6 millions in the open call now until 22nd of March. So I wanted to make also this announcement that it's ongoing now until there's a deadline on 22nd of March to apply for 100 million, this budget of works of 100 millions in the early wave. So please be conscious of this. Now, this policy is not in isolation. There are many synergies with others. In particular, there will be a support action which will engage the community, create some liaisons with other policy efforts. There's a support action to define the strategic agenda for the next phases of deployment. There's a support action for integration with the European Initiative on Cloud Federation and Cloud2Edge initiative. This is more central in another program, the Digital Europe program, but this support action will create the relations. So there would be many more details to explain about 5G corridors, the safety and non-safety use cases, all the benefits it can bring, all the collateral benefits of covering along the pathways. But I'll just leave it for if there are questions later. Next slide, please. 5G for smart communities is the second 5G action of the CEF Digital. So there are 50 millions this year, 25 millions in the ongoing call. What is it about? Deploying this money goes straight into the 5G infrastructure. So the 5G systems we will evaluate the innovative use cases. You know, it's the 6th 5G conference. So in the 5 past editions, we discussed the vertical use cases, that it's not only enhanced mobile broadband, but you also have the connectivity of objects, the mission critical and the low latency use cases. The 5G PPP was very successful in delivering examples, pilots, And so that's what it's all about. We will target local authorities, public authorities, services, providers of services of general interest or general economic interest. So typically a hospital, a school, this kind of end users. And we will ask them to present how innovative their use cases. And this way we will fund the infrastructure that enables it. So after this, our aim is to gather best practices and blueprints, and then we will replicate and diffuse this. So that's all about this call for proposal, open 22nd of March. So we welcome operators and verticals. Next slide, please. And the Recovery and Resilience Facility was presented kindly by Elisabetta. 30 billion euros will be dedicated by member states in their plans for connectivity. All 27 member states do mention 5G strategies. 11 do plan to use EU budget, the EU budget directly for this. 6 focus on 5G corridors, 5 on fiber more generally to roll out, and 5 target municipalities, business parks. There's even one targeting specifically public safety use cases. So quite a good interest of 5G aspects in the Recovery and Resilience Facility. So I have to stop there, but I'll be happy to participate in the discussion about public funding of 5G. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eric. Before moving forward, I would like to make you just a quick question, and that's how will cross-border cooperation support 5G investment? Yes.
So, well, these two actions are part of CEP Digital. So they cannot be seen in isolation. They are part of the whole. So there are synergies with the transport policy, with energy policy of overall of CEF. But also all the member states are together in a CEF committee when we design. So the CEF committee, made of member states experts, has voted this. So that's the first element in the design. It's by design EU design with the Commission and the member states, of course. That's one thing. So the two actions are different from this point of view. The 5G corridors is obviously cross-border because it focuses on those large transport corridors already defined by the policy. But by the way, it's not exhaustive. It's not a condition to be part of the TEN-T corridor, but cross-border sections of these are physically emblematic and symbolic of cross-border cooperation. And a project in the consortium must involve actors from country A and country B to be sure, of course, that there is cross-border cooperation. So this part is already intrinsic. 5G for smart communities. It's more second level, the cross-border cooperation, because a community might very well be in the middle of a state, and that's it. But then that's the whole point. It's also a political impact that we want to trigger and incentivize, because once we have 5G smart communities which are there with flagships, innovative use cases which show everybody how to do it, how it was done, how well, who were the actors, and what's the architecture used. This, we want to diffuse the replication using the support action, and this diffusion will be cross-border. So this is at this level that EU value happens. We use the EU results of the 5G PPP, and we will diffuse them at EU level. So cross-border cooperation is indeed key at that level. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you very much. Very helpful. We can move to Ralph, and to have a concrete player perspective in dealing with 5G funds and also possible cooperation models.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the kind introduction, Elisabetta, and welcome everybody online. Let me briefly introduce the company that I represent, Vantage Towers. We're one of the leading tower companies in Europe. We operate around 82,000 towers across 10 countries. The company is headquartered in Germany. We were established only in 2020 and did an IPO on the Frankfurt Stock Exchange in March 2021. Now, the TowerCo main business model is to build and operate passive infrastructure and lease that to mobile network operators and other companies. This infrastructure sharing concept that we pursue lowers the investment requirements and improves the abilities for broadband rollout. Also, the TowerCos can attract capital from the market in a different way that other market participants can do it, which enables us to take a very long-term perspective on investment. So what is then the importance of investment in broadband and funding? And let me here focus on the 5G corridors. We probably may talk later about other areas of funding, such as rural areas. So for 5G transport corridors, I think there's multiple reasons to pursue a rollout there. There is the opportunity to foster the digitization of vertical sectors in the transport sector. We can push smarter and more sustainable mobility, which is one of the goals of the European Green Deal. And then finally, we can also enable new business models. Then on the other hand, there are very high costs of building these 5G corridors, in particular across borders. And there's a certain reluctance from the private sector to shoulder the investment alone. This is why the EU has realized that there's a need for funding and renewed its standalone infrastructure funding program, the Connecting Europe facility. Now, how are we at Vantage Towers looking at 5G corridor funding in particular? The Connecting Europe facility goal is a core European one, and it's a very ambitious task. We're trying to leverage private investment in order to establish a full pan-European transport network of 5G corridors by 2027. Here, I'd like to take the opportunity to congratulate the European Commission on getting the final work program for the CEF Digital adopted before Christmas and for launching the first call for tenders this month. It's good to see that the European Commission encourages the funding of infrastructure sharing models as part of the Connecting Europe facility. The work program also realizes the benefits of sharing not only passive but also active equipment through a so-called neutral host model. We hear a lot about uncertainty about 5G business models and about the costs and other challenges of building highly performing and dense 5G networks. The infrastructure sharing will help us reducing these deployment costs and facilitate the efficient use of resources and achieve a quicker rollout. Not least because of that, I think the Commission clearly sees TowerCos as an important partner for 5G deployment, and I also believe that the industry stands ready to play that role. Now, what are the concrete 5G corridor projects that are of interest to us? For Vantage Towers, there is a number of opportunities in our 10 European markets, both in terms of 5G corridors for railways, but also for connected and automated mobility. Eric has mentioned that before, at least 6 member states have chosen to use the excellent opportunities that the RRF presents. Greece, for example, has decided to sign 160 million euros to fund 5G corridors for COM, and this is a country that Vantage Towers is strongly committed to. The project seeks to develop 5G networks to deploy 5G alongside motorways in Greece. Then there is the national plan of the Czech Republic, which sets aside roughly 30 million euros for supporting 5G rollout. A part of that will go to 5G railway corridors. Then there is the plan of the Czech government and the Free State of Bavaria, who seek to deploy a 5G corridor between Munich and Prague. Vantage Towers has a presence in both Germany and the Czech Republic, and we look very favorably at the project. Lenka, who is with me on the panel this morning, will give you some more detailed insights into the project soon. And finally, there's the so-called gigabit train concept, which was developed in Switzerland by Swisscom and SBB, that is looked into very closely in a number of member states nowadays. Let me briefly elaborate a bit more on the gigabit train concept. From our view, it's obvious that if Europe wants to be a climate neutral continent by 2050, the railway sector will play a crucial role in achieving this ambitious target. And it's the gigabit train that should be a part of this journey. The idea behind the concept is that the next generation networks that will be deployed along railways should be capable of delivering 2 things. First of all, gigabit connectivity for the railway passengers over the public 5G networks. And then on the other hand, the future railway communication system, the FRMCS, that will enable the railway digitization. If you want to picture a use case, maybe you think of a teenager accessing the metaverse in 2030 while traveling at the speed of 300 kilometers on an automated high-speed train between Frankfurt and Paris. Vantage Towers, I have to say, takes no credit for developing the concept nor for promoting it for several years, yet we certainly can be one of its enablers. Why is that the case? Again, the biggest challenge for securing such connectivity for trains investment is the investment challenge. And even if both the EU and the national governments attribute significant funds for deploying the 5G alongside rail tracks, there is a deployment that needs to take place in the most cost-efficient way. And then sharing of passive infrastructure such as towers, ducts, fiber, equipment, shelters, power supply or utility poles can help achieve that, as well as the sharing of active elements that are the antennas of the public 5G network. There's numerous difficulties in getting such a 5G corridor done, and in particular in a cross-border context. Yet we think that one project of bringing together the major players from the railway, mobile and infrastructure sector in France, Germany, and Luxembourg can apply for CEF funding already this year. And this is despite a rather challenging deadline for the call for tenders of the 22nd of March. So what, in our view, is the way forward? We've seen, the European Court of Auditors yesterday has highlighted that Europe needs to step up its efforts in 5G rollout if it wants to compete with other continents. At the same time, I believe that it's generally in a good place to continue developing its 5G corridor deployment in the coming years. This will help the continent's competitiveness and the digitization of the transport sector. In terms of the funding, we have the CEF, we have the RRF, and subsidies coming from the national budget, and they should complement each other. It remains to be seen whether this will help leveraging the private investments needed. I'm more confident that the 5.5 billion euros that are needed to cover 26,000 kilometers of highways in Europe can be deployed in that way, especially if there is a prospect of return on investment of COM service as the Commission is expecting it to emerge around 2025. For railway, the case is far more uncertain. My personal view is that much more funding will be needed to ensure 5G connectivity there. Second, the fact that the CEF Digital Work Program recognizes the importance of infrastructure sharing, in our view, is a very good first step. Through this and through taking a long-term perspective, TowerCos can act as a bridge between the investment restraints of the mobile network operators on the one hand, and the expectations of policymakers to have excellent mobile connectivities on the other. And lastly, the EU should ensure that private investors find the right environment to thrive. The review of the EU Broadband Cost Reduction Directive that was already mentioned in the session that was preceding this one can act as an investment booster. It should not be underestimated in our view. It will be instrumental in tackling administrative hurdles for network rollout, for example, bringing down the time to obtain permits and for getting access to sites. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ralph. Very interesting, and thanks for sharing your concrete experience. We see many ongoing projects on 5G corridors on your side. Thank you. We can move on with Alberto.
Hi, Elisabetta. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. The floor is yours.
Thanks a lot. This very interesting event, the two panels that we've been seeing so far, just let me give you a brief introduction about Digital Europe and what I'm going to say effectively. Because Digital Europe is a trade association, so we represent companies from across digital. The use of the funds that has emerged, particularly as a function of the pandemic, as we all know, has been one of the priorities that we've been monitoring and advocating concretely in the past couple of years. I think one of the priorities, particularly as we've looked at the work that our national trade associations have done, and we have 39 of them across Europe in the past couple of years, is really trying to understand how the funds can actually be leveraged to do what they're supposed to be doing. That is to move Europe into recovery mode. And I think overall we are very very encouraged by what we see clearly, both from the aspiration that was given very strongly by the Commission in 2020 when the big plans for the RRF were announced, and we saw big goals announced immediately, which I think is something that we tend to underestimate now. We've sort of grown accustomed to the fact that we have this target of 20% for digital, and we should also mention the green targets that were set. And we should not take it for granted at all. I mean, it's worth keeping in mind that the shock that we received with the pandemic was huge, and we had several different political priorities that member states could have pushed for, could have gone for as the key targets to spend the money. And we ended up, doing the right thing in terms of the targets. That is, we have understood that we need to use the funds as a transformative mechanism, and to try and do things, building on the good things that we've done in the past with the funds to make our economies more digital. We looked at the whole set of funds that were issued. And this is a big part of what we've been looking at, the national funds, so how the member states will be spending those funds. In October 2020, we looked at the various key chapters that we have advocated member states should be spending the funds towards. One of them clearly is connectivity. We're very pleased that overall there's been a reliance on infrastructure investment as part of the national plans, and 5G specifically as part of that. And clearly the other part of the funding that we have been looking at, and in this case more traditionally, is the EU funds that have been allotted by the European Commission under the various instruments. We've been talking about the Connecting Europe facility quite a lot, but clearly that's as Director Wezenbeek said at the beginning, we have numerous other funds that are still available, including structural and investment funds and the Fund for Strategic Investments, in addition to Next Generation EU and the CEF Digital. But in and of itself, just the continuation of CEF and building on the cross-country initiatives that we had seen funded by the first version of the CEF continue into the new CEF, I think is extremely encouraging. And we need to remember that I think one of the key starting points for us as we look at funds is that we all know that we in Europe are under a lot of strain when it comes to investment. Using funds is one of the main tools that we need to be able to use wisely so that we can make a difference. And this has been referred to by a lot of the previous speakers. That is, we need to make use of the funds in a way that actually starts and facilitates private investment. So in a way that doesn't crowd out the positive that can come from the market, but acts as a catalyst for further investment by the private sector. And I think one of the challenges in making sure that happens, even though clearly everybody is working very well, and we commend the Commission on the work that they're doing, not only on the CEF but also on reviewing the national plans for the RRF. But the challenge still is that of avoiding fragmentation, a piecemeal use of the funds that invests in smaller projects that are not complementary to each other. As much as possible, this is being avoided. But if we look just at the RRF, one of the key challenges that we have had as a trade association, also working through national trade associations, still has been that of trying to make sense of the national plans, trying to look at how the different projects and spending chapters have been described and assigned to the different headings of green and digital, for example. So this is still One of the key areas that we'll need to look at, we're going now into implementation mode. We'll need to look at exactly how the funds are being spent, and there's going to have to be a lot of collaboration in a true public-private partnership to make sure that when we look at deployments in a couple, 3-4 years from now, we'll clearly see how those will have been developing private investment in addition. I'll keep it very short so we can go into Q&A, hopefully.
Thank you, Alberto. Thank you very much. Very interesting, the view and the perspective of an association like Digital Europe. And I will leave the question to the Q&A later, and I will move on to the next speech, Lenka, and that will give her experience, as concrete experience as a project coordinator of a 5G corridors. Thank you, Lenka. The floor is yours.
Hi, Elisabetta. Thank you for passing the word to me. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Elisabetta, for the introduction. My name is Lenka Scholzova, and I'm on behalf of the Bavarian State Chancellery, the coordinator of the project of the 5G corridor Munich-Prague. In next couple of minutes, I would like to introduce you very briefly an example of cross-border cooperation on 5G matters in the heart of Europe between the Free State of Bavaria and the Czech Republic. And I will introduce very briefly the project of the 5G corridor Munich-Prague. Next slide, please. This initiative of the 5G corridor Munich-Prague has been established at the end of 2020 by a common declaration on cooperation in the field of 5G applications between the Bavarian State Chancellery in the southern part of Germany and by the Ministry of Industry and Trade of the Czech Republic. What is our aim? We want to create, or we are creating an innovative 5G cross-border reference region in Central Europe. The Free State of Bavaria is the driving force in this project, and we see this project as a bridge between western part of Europe, Germany, Bavaria, and the Visegrad region, as Bavaria has historically very, very close cooperation with this region, and this project focusing on innovation and high tech is an outcome of this long-term cooperation. Next slide, please. What is in general our basic approach in the project of the 5G corridor Munich-Prague? From a little bit broader perspective. We are connecting two main components, applied research and 5G infrastructure. And we are connecting these components with use cases in the fields beside connected and automated mobility of e-health, Industry 4.0, smart region, and last but not least, also cybersecurity. Coming to the main point of my speech, in the component of 5G infrastructure, we are going to submit a project proposal within the CEF Digital Work Program, focusing on a cross-border 5G corridor along the highway between Munich and Prague. Next slide, please. For the purpose of this project proposal, we have established a strong project consortium consisting of groups of all relevant stakeholders. First, we have involved the OEMs, the car producers, which means concretely named Audi, BMW, and Skoda. Then we have involved, of course, the mobile network operators, talking about Vodafone, T-Mobile, O2, Then we have involved, of course, the TowerCos, for example, Vantage Tower. Hello, Ralph. Great to having you on board in this project. And of course, we are also in touch with the road operators at the both sides of the border, also in Germany as well as in the Czech Republic. And last but not least, we are also in touch with researchers to give advice for the project from the researchers' point of view. We are also, of course, in touch with relevant associations and public authorities from both countries. Concretely, with in Germany with the Federal Ministry for Transportation, in the Czech Republic with the Ministry for Industry and Trade, and with the Ministry for Transportation. Next slide, please. Focusing on our project idea, we will going to define a secure and reliable 5G communication from the point of view of connected and automated mobility. And second, connected to that, we will set a basis for or a concrete plan for a subsequent deployment project within TEF Digital. At this point, I would like to point out that the project idea is really industry-driven by the OEMs, the car producers, and the MNOs. And the main goals are to provide service continuity of the 5G network at the border between both of the countries, and to set standards for connected and automated mobility. And these goals can only be achieved in cooperation with all the relevant stakeholders. Okay, that's it for a brief introduction. Next slide, please. There are just my contact data. You're also welcome to visit our website. Thank you for your attention, and I'm of course open for your questions and looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Lenka. Thank you so much. Very impressed by the huge collaboration, because this 5G corridors project involved all the different stakeholders, so very large collaboration project. So we can start the Q&A section. I will receive some question. I will address this first question to Eric, and that is, are there any alternative ways to benefit from the funds allocated for the cross-border connectivity project for island countries?
Yeah, well, for island countries, of course, it's more difficult to establish road connectivity. That's a point taken. That gives me the opportunity to mention that. So first of all, 5G smart communities can be very well in scope in an island as it can be elsewhere. But that's one thing. And also, I didn't mention there are other non-5G actions also in the CEF Digital funding. One of them is pretty interesting for islands, which is the global gateways. And actually, global gateways it includes a lot submarine cables. So submarine cables are also part of are also funded by the global gateways. Our president von der Leyen mentioned in her State of the Union speech that she would develop global gateways to improve the connectivity of the EU between its member states and with its internationally, basically with third countries. So submarine cables are pretty much a part of CEF Digital. It's just another action that I didn't mention. There are actions for high performance computing, quantum, secured computing. These I didn't mention, but indeed I would rather recommend to go for the global gateways submarine cables for islands. This is where there is competitive advantage for islands.
Thank you, Eric. Anybody else wants to comment? Otherwise, we can go to the second question. Maybe both Eric or Alberto and Ralph can comment on the second one. So to what extent is there really a viable business case for MNOs to extend their coverage along the safe corridors in more rural areas? How can public funding mechanisms help develop this? So coverage in rural areas. So maybe both Eric, Ralph, or Alberto, or anybody wants to comment on this question is welcome.
Yeah, sorry, Eric, if you want to go first.
No.
I mean, if we had the full answer to this question and the silver bullet, probably then there would be no need for funding for 5G corridors. And it is indeed the uncertainty around the business models, and that is causing a bit of a problem. At the same time, we understand that we are going to develop those business models on the way while we are running the projects with the funding of the EU and the member states. I would like to separate the CEF corridors from the rural areas, because I think they are not related in that sense. Because for the CEF corridors, you need a designated connectivity for the transport path itself. But I mean, there's already ideas on how you could develop business cases as an MNO. If you talk to people who are familiar with projects in other countries, then you could probably, for example, provide 5G service via network slicing to transport companies for non-security related services.
Thanks, Ralph. Eric, you wanted to add something, or Alberto?
No, just to mention that rural areas are also targeted by the regional and agricultural fund. I mean, there's a whole mapping exercise which is a bit there are two sides which are complementary. So we imagine that once for example, if fiber is rolled out all along a highway or major transport path, this could also have collateral benefits for covering the neighboring rural area. But the other way around is not true. It's not because you're a rural area that you necessarily are close to a major transport path. So it's just a step towards helping. And I wanted to show that to say that there's a support action that will help us think about those business models. Actually, a lot of actors are already thinking about them with or without us. But yeah, there's a whole thematic about what will be shared or not shared that touches upon a bit what Rita said earlier about competition aspects of or stated issues about sharing or not sharing. But I think sharing or not sharing is one of the key thinking elements in this, and probably the strategic agenda that we will develop with the support action will also reflect on this and allow to discuss within the stakeholders. You are muted.
We can hear you.
Thanks so much, Eric. And so if we don't have any other comments on this question, I will move to the next one. Is a very interesting one, and that is a key question of the market. So how can public funding help ensure not only a 5G infrastructure development, but also the affordability and the accessibility of service? So how can the take-up can be boosted? I will firstly address this to Eric, then anybody else is more than welcome.
Yeah, sure. So for 5G for smart communities, first example, we are targeting public authorities and providers of service of general interest directly. So our experts will evaluate and take into account in the impact criteria what's basically the price conditions that are made from the operator to this provider of service of general interest. So accessibility will definitely be one key element. So we expect that the public authority will then be in a position to easily access this service and have IoT services, vertical services for their health or education use case, which are possible within the limits of their public, usually public funding. So this is already embedded in the design of the and the evaluation of the project. These after that, the services are of general interest, so they are supposed to be by definition accessible. In 5G corridor, it's more subtle. We discussed the business models. It's one of the elements. Actually, ministries of transport and the highway authorities are involved, but it's only one. It's one element that is taken into account, but the business models also have to take into account the profitability of the investment in the long run. So it's more balanced.
Maybe I can give a comment from point of view of a concrete 5G corridor. From my point of view, the key is to involve the users to the development projects. Talking about the 5G corridor, it's the car producers in our case, providing mobility services to the citizens at the end. When they are able, when they have some space to put their requirements and to discuss the deployment and the implementation with the MNOs, that's the key from my point of view, to provide 5G also at the end to the citizens.
Alberto, would you like to?
Yeah, no, thanks. I mean, I think we must start from the acknowledgement, in a sense, that 5G, I mean, mobile services in Europe overall are incredibly cheap compared to other parts of the world already. So I think the focus should really be on creating, if you will, through the funds, that demand side pool, so that we have deployment of 5G where in the initial phases will be struggling more perhaps to bring 5G services. So the idea of communities, clearly, where we have public services such as hospitals, schools, we have that pool there. We also have clearly that industrial pool, for example, for smart manufacturing, where we know we want 5G vertical use cases in addition to connected mobility, for example, to be taken up. But we know that demand at this junction is still uncertain. So bringing the connectivity to the future users will probably bring that benefit, that use case closer to them, and we'll get the technology up and running. But I wouldn't be worried about affordability early on, because we're dealing with a climate in terms of the cost services to end users, which is already pretty looks good in Europe so far, and we don't see that changing in the immediate future.
Thank you, Alberto. Thank you. And so we have a tricky last question. I see. The question is this: countries extract billions for the spectrum license fees. How can this be reconciled with the providing European funding for 5G coverage in rural areas? And maybe Eric can be. Sorry, Eric, but
yeah, the spectrum question. By the way, there are other sessions also in the 5G conference, which will come back to the correct to how to design a good auction in spectrum and these complex matters. One of the elements I imagine that is known to the audience is the the coverage obligations which are attached to spectrum licenses. So indeed, there's money flowing one way and the obligations flowing the other way. And how can these be reconciled? I'm not sure there's an exact one-to-one mapping. However, what is for sure is that on the one hand there are spectrum license fees. On the other hand, there is EU money. So the Recovery and Resilience Facility in this respect is a bit special, because it doesn't come from the same sources. It's for the first time the European Union has its own source of money. It can issue debt instruments to fund that. So it's really EU budget that doesn't come from the member states, which is directly invested like that into member states. So that makes the link even more distant between the two. So there's no easy answer. What we can say is that public funding for rural areas is a mixture of regional funds, agricultural funds, recovery and resilience facility, and so the member states are keen in managing it and financing parts of it. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you so much. So we have some minutes left. I will make a last question to Alberto. That is, what long-lasting impact do you expect from the next generation the European program will have on the connectivity investment in Europe?
I mean, that's the million-dollar question, in the sense that, as we've said, ideally this is to be used. All the funds actually are to be used as tools to bring a sustainable investment situation to the market, and if we use them well, that's exactly what they should be doing. To go to the previous question, we shouldn't be in a situation where we have a systematic problem in having an environment that's not naturally conducive to investment. If you squeeze money out of auctions, purely auctions, clearly that's money that's taken off of network investment, and then you need to fix it in some shape or form by using funds. So that could be a solution to it. This is not sustainable in the long run. So I think the funds can do that. But we also need to keep thinking about the other framework conditions, most of which have already been mentioned in the previous session, and that is largely to do with telecoms regulation. So effectively how the money that we spend can actually be leveraged in the long term by operators to still spend and keep spending CapEx and OpEx on networks once the funds run out. And we create a vicious circle as opposed to a virtuous circle, as opposed to a vicious circle, where we constantly have to resort to funds because we still have that investment problem. In the long term, we should be looking to fixing that investment problem. And overall, we'll probably need fewer public funds to do that if everything works well.
Yeah.
Please, Eric.
Yeah, sorry, I should also have mentioned that we're working a lot. I said the member states have a key role. We're working a lot with the member states already with them. And for example, there's a 5G toolbox that we used. So the concept of toolbox is that it's the member states deciding, but together we decide on a common set of toolbox that it's easy to pick up, so that there is a consistency and discussions between the member states. And within the 5G toolbox, as Alberto just said, there are quite a lot of details about what it is to design a spectrum policy which is conducing to investment-friendly conditions. And I don't remember them all, but I know there's a list of 9 aspects. So it's pretty detailed what it means to do that in an investment-friendly manner. So, and we are supporting this and doing everything we can with member states to progress in this direction.
Thank you, Eric. Speaking about tools, we have a very concrete question. Could there be a European database to facilitate access to fiber to support 5G deployment? Me
again? Oh, I have a part of answer. If you want, I can start. That's the broadband cost reduction directive already went a bit this way. Actually, we had proposed that in the first place, but it didn't make it. So we're thinking. It's my colleagues in the regulatory unit. They're really thinking about what to do for this, and so there is a consultation that went on about what to do next and to strengthen the broadband cost reduction directive. And so about this, no, it's not yet. It could be, but no, it's not yet something we propose. But we will strengthen the broadband cost reduction directive. That's part of that's already in the thinking. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Eric. The last question is about the security and also participation of non-European operators. The question is, in principle, cloud and IaaS providers might play a relevant role in 5G in the softwareization of networks. Most of them are not European companies. Is a transboundary data flow a potential issue?
So first of all, CEF is an infrastructure funding project. So software is by regulation in our legal base, not in scope. I mean, pure software, internet services software. I mean, not softwareized 5G, but the software part. Why? Because it says in a recital that there's a Digital Europe program for this, and we're not supposed to do the same. So the regulators have clearly drawn a red line. We don't fund cloud services if it's not a 5G cloud. If it's pure cloud internet service, we cannot fund it in CEF. So that's already pretty clear. Now the question could be broadened to eligibility of telecom operators, or how do we deal with this? And for this, there are security. 5G is considered under the same angle as Pierce mentioned in his keynote speech. There are cybersecurity matters which are more and more thought about, and there is a public 5G cybersecurity toolbox, which we definitely take into account and in this thing. So there is a security self-declaration for the 5G corridors of the 5G smart communities. We need a self-declaration, and we'll ask member states to read it and validate it with their national law. And yes, so for both projects, for both actions, 5G corridors and 5G for smart communities, there's a security self-declaration that we'll read. Yes.
Thank you, everyone. I think we had a good one discussion and on the European ambition with this 5G funds allocation, and we also had a concrete view about the 5G corridors project and how much are they involving different stakeholders, and also the practical view of a tower operators very involved with Ralph. And so very, very helpful. We have some really 5 minutes left for a final conclusion from everyone. Who wants to start?
I have just a simple conclusion. From my point of view, the CEF Digital program is very helpful in terms of covering the market failures. So if we are successful with our project proposal, I'm just looking forward to make the 5G corridor along the highway between Munich and Prague into reality, thanks to that.
Thank you, Lenka.
Thank you, Lenka. I'll go. It's hard to coordinate, but no, I can only second that, and I can only say that, irrespective of the bigger questions that we've discussed about private, long-term, etc., this is the time to be serious about spending the money that we have. It is true that it is not often that we have these huge sums of money to spend on digital, and we need to be serious about doing it well, try to be as coherent as possible, and doing it now. So probably more like a plea to the member states to do their job in the months ahead well, so that we can hopefully see real results in a few years.
Thank you, Alberto.
If I can go next, well, thanks, Elisabetta. A very, very interesting panel, I have to say. First of all, I think that through the publication of the first call of tenders, there's a certain buzz in the industry currently around the transport corridors. Lots of interest in it. I think Eric will feel that when they're approached by stakeholders. I think it's also the time for the industry to come together and now to start discussing concretely how are we going to do this. For this is an excellent opportunity. Our plea is probably to policymakers in general, the authorities involved in this, to support these projects, because we will also detect certain regulatory legal obstacles on the way that come with the deploying of so many towers and so many technology alongside those corridors. And we will certainly be able to define new ways of deploying these, and having the support there would be helpful. Thank you.
And I will conclude with a date, 22nd of March. Don't lose time. Find a partner, make a consortium, draft a proposal. 22nd of March comes very soon. And don't forget, 100 million euros, don't leave them there for the corridors, 25 million euros for the communities, with 25 more coming up in September, but 22nd of March. So don't leave a project with 75% co-funding. Thank you very much.
The deadline is very challenging, I have to say.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Forum Europe, for this interesting discussion.
Thank you, Elisabetta, and thank you to all of our panelists. And yeah, you heard from Eric there. You've got just under 2 months to get those talking together. So, but that's great. Thank you so much, guys. A really, really interesting discussion, and great to hear some of the concrete examples of how the projects are evolving, and also Eric, some of the plans you have as well. So, really interesting discussion. Thank you all so much indeed. So we're moving straight on now to our next panel. So we're going to be looking now at 5G equipment ecosystems, looking at the continued evolution of the 5G supply market, bringing in things like the discussion around Open RAN, which again has been looked at in the earlier sessions this morning, and looking more broadly what this might mean for all the different stakeholders in Europe. So that's coming up straight away. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in around about 2 or 3 minutes with the next session. But for now, thank you again to Elisabetta and to all of our speakers in that session. As I said, we'll be back in 2 minutes or so with our next session. Thank you.